Hello and welcome to FlightSim Alaska. I'm Dave, the armchair bush pilot. For today's virtual flight sim tour of Alaska, I want to do something a little bit different, something that's more straight up aviation than it is tourism. I am, as you can see, in the CRJ 700, all decked out with its Alaska livery here, and we're going to fly from Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport over to Kodiak Airport on Kodiak Island, just near the city of Kodiak. So let's go ahead and jump into the airplane and see if we can get it started. Okay, so here we're going to start cold and dark. So I think first things first, we've got to hit the battery. There we go, battery's on. So I think the next thing we're going to do is we're going to fire up the APU, get that going. Let's go ahead and now check, see if it's actually getting fired up. There you can see right there, the little indicators starting to tick upward. So cool. We just got to wait for that to turn green up there. All right, let's turn on our iPad here. And this will give us some information about, what doors are open and that kind of stuff to, increase the simulation. Now over here, we've got performance characteristics, which are also input in the PFD, down there. The FMS, I guess, is what it's called. I don't know my jargon that well, so bear with me. Okay, cool. The APU has come on. We can tell by the avionics right there. Now we got to fix that situation right there. So we got to turn on align the IRS. So that's what those two switches are going to do, and it's going to take just a minute before that comes up. So let's see what else. Let's go from the left to the right and just turn some things on here. I'm going to set these reference speeds as wet. Click set all. Fantastic. And that would normally appear on that MFD there, and those little buttons you can get to set that up. So before we get to setting up the pause init with the FMS, let's go ahead and turn on the no smoking seatbelt lights and arm the emergency lights there. So now we're on to pause init. So let's go do that. Starting with, let's see, PANC, find them, good. We are gate C1. That's actually an Alaska Airlines gate. That's good. And then next page, go ahead and get that location poked in. Awesome. Now we can start with the flight plan. Let's see, PANC again. Where's my P? There it is. All right, and PAU, I think, for Kodiak. We're going to skip our alternate airport and instead just put in 07R as our originating runway out of Ted Stevens here. See, that goes there. Cool. And then let's give ourselves a flight number. FSA444 seems pretty good to me. Hit execute on that and look at our flight plan. You can see there isn't really one in the MFD, so let's go ahead and get that set up. So we're going to start by going to direct to TED. That's a VOR just off the runway of 07R. Cool. Now we're going to use an airway here. That airway is going to be V438. That in, and then we will take that out to ODK. And once we have that in, I think it's time to execute, and then go ahead and get to perf stat. So that there, we are not going to punch that stuff in. We're actually going to come over here, set payload and simulator, copy perfinit, and go have a look. And there it is. And I could type this all in, but I just don't want to right now. Okay, so moving on to the VNAV setup, we're going to go ahead and ignore this, and the same with that next page. We don't really need to worry about it too much. So let's go to the departures and arrivals. So starting with departures, Potter 01 and runway 07R. Great. Execute that and go back to arrival. So ILS 26, what we want here, and ODK. Jump over to legs here, and what I'm doing is I'm looking at all of these different waypoints, and I'm just going to verify that these are what I want on my flight plan. Look for any discontinuities or vectors. I like to try to get rid of that stuff because the ATC doesn't handle it properly. So I think this is looking pretty good, except for those vectors there, but that's missed approach. I think we're just going to let that be. All right, just checking the other pages here. I think I'm off track back. Let's see, flight plan. Just update my MFD modes here. All right, I don't like that. Change the radios to manual so we don't have some auto stuff going on here. Well, nav radios anyways. All right, what else do we have to do? Start by setting our nav source. Make sure it's FMS1. That's going to be important. There we go. There it is. Awesome possum. Let's see what else. Go ahead and set the barometer. So we're going to fire up ATIS here and see what the barometer is.
Anchorage Airport information, Whiskey 2100 Zulu. Wind 150 at 7. Visibility 10. Sky condition, ceiling 900 feet overcast. Temperature 14. Dew point 10. Altimeter 29.82. ILS runway 7 right and ILS runway 7 left in use. Landing and departing runway 7 right and runway 7 left. All our...
Oh, now we have that dialed in. I think we can start looking at getting the aircraft the rest of the way configured. So I'm just kind of running through these buttons here. Go turn some lights on. Really good. Leave those alone. Moving up here, go ahead and turn on the fuel pumps and the cross flow APUs on. That's good to go. Turn the hydraulics on. Fantastic. Engines alone for now. Let's see. Let's go ahead and set the elevation. So let's see. You can't see it, but I've actually popped out another window here. It doesn't show up in Ops Studio, but that's going to let me change the elevation over to what it's supposed to be in Anchorage, which is about 100. Let's say 140. Okay, double checking hydraulics. So I was just trying to point that out, but it turns out that that thing doesn't appear. So now going down, I'll go ahead and turn the air conditioning on there. Cool. And turn the icing for the windows on, and then this is the miscellaneous lights, so just dome lights and that sort of thing. Probably won't need them, but there you have it. Those are already turned on. All right, going down. So all fine. Not much to do there. Already did that. Those are off. That's what we're supposed to be. Those are for the reversers. That we need to set. We're gonna go ahead and turn that. Let's see here. On to now. It's no longer on standby, so that's good. Take a while to figure that out. Turn that little standby radio on too. From here, stabilizer trim buttons. That off, mock trim, and then yaw damn there. Turn those off. And there's messages up here that would normally show up, and so they're not there anymore. That's great. Again, mucking with some lights here. Probably don't need most of these, but that's helpful. Okay, now it looks like we're all configured, so let's go ahead and request IFR clearance to Kodiak.
Anchorage clearance delivery ACBP 444 IFR to Kodiak ready to copy.
ACBP 444 is cleared to Kodiak Airport as filed. Takeoff runway 7 right climb and maintain 7,000 feet. Departure frequency is 126.4 squawk 001 tree.
ACBP 444 cleared to Kodiak Airport as filed. Takeoff runway 7 right climb and maintain 7,000 feet. Departure on 126.4 squawk 001 tree.
ACBP 444 readback is correct. Contact ground on 121.9 when ready to taxi. Good day.
Okay, so now at this point, let's go ahead and set that altitude. So that's up here with our autopilot stuff. I was kind of doing that while he was talking. Next is ATC. We could do it there, but we're going to do it down here instead. I'm sorry, not ATC. This is the squawk code. So we'll set that down here. Make sure I get it right. All right, that looks good to me. Double checking. Oops, didn't need that. Okay. All right, and see it reflected up in there too. We could have punched it in with these codes here, but I preferred not to do that. So let's punch in our COM1, and so we can request our taxi.
Anchorage ground ACBP 444 with whiskey ready to taxi IFR.
ACBP 444 taxi to and hold short of runway 7 right using taxiway Echo 2 Echo 1 Golf Kilo cross runway 3 Kilo Juliet cross runway 25 left Charlie. Contact tower on 118 decimal tree when ready.
Taxiing hold short runway 7 right using taxiway Echo 2 Echo 1 Golf Kilo cross runway 3 Kilo Juliet cross runway 25 left Charlie ACBP 444.
Okay, so now I think we can go ahead and request pushback, and we'll start the engines at that point.
Anchorage ground ACBP 444 requesting pushback.
ACBP 444 pushback request accepted.
Okay, just gonna check that the chocks are not in place. That looks pretty darn good. So now I think they've asked us to go off to the left. I want to go to the right here. That's where the runway is, and that's where they, I think, are asking us to go. But we're just going to try to go straight back, and then we'll go to the left, or turn back to the left. But first things first, let's start the engine. Okay, all we got to do is press that thing, just double checking all my lights and stuff are good. Okay, we got to wait for that N2 there to come up to about 12 or 15%, and then we can go ahead and bring the throttle from cutoff. There we go. Now that should start spooling up, and once it hits about 60, then we can fire up the other engine. In the meantime, let's maybe look around and see what, or I should say where we're at. I will say Anchorage International looks pretty true to life. It's good enough for me. I like it. It's recognizable.
Anchorage ground ACBP 444 requesting pushback to steer the aircraft to the left.
ACBP 444, your request has been transmitted to the operator.
Okay, it looks like we can go ahead and fire up this other engine, so let's get that going. Gotta pay attention here. Where we want to back up to. A little bit tough to tell sometimes. I want to line up right on that green stripe there, just right in front of our field of view.
Anchorage ground ACBP 444 requesting the end of pushback.
ACBP 444 request to end pushback received.
Double check our parking brake is set there so we can finish spooling up. Double checking our list here, see what we still have to do. Alright, let's arm our steering gear. That's our nose wheel gear. And then I think at this point we can go ahead and turn off the manual crossflow and turn off our APU. We no longer need that going. Okay, it looks like those are turned off, so we're good to go. Turn some navigation lights on here. Ready to taxi on down. Parking brake off, and I think we can get underway. I really do, like I said, like how Anchorage International Airport looks. I am flying this live weather today, so you can see it's kind of crummy out. It's raining, and I think once we get into the air, it's going to be a little bit gnarly for a couple of minutes. Most of the weather is up against the mountains, and that's really true to life here. And for what it's worth, I'm navigating all of this more or less by memory and knowledge of the airport more than charts and stuff. Pretty much any other airport, I need charts. just to see where I'm supposed to be going here. Cross over runway 33 here in a minute. That one is very frequently where you see big jumbo jets taken off out of. And those are the coolest to watch because you can get right up underneath the runway and there at Earthquake Park and watch them take off to the north and, well, they go off to the east or west ultimately. And so if you're unfamiliar with this area, I'll talk about it for a second before I jump forward to the end of the runway here because this is kind of boring. There's a great park, urban park, just sort of adjacent to the airport, and that'd be Kincaid Park. It's a really neat place to visit. Lots of great hiking, skiing, single track trails if you're cycling. Great resource for urban Alaska. Okay, I'm gonna jump out of this for a second. We're gonna jump forward and hit the end of the runway, shall we? Okay, not quite the end of the runway here, but I sort of forgot one step. We need to get this thing into takeoff configuration. So we need to set the flaps there to 8 and see them indicated there. And now there's a message off to our right, kind of right there. And maybe I'll zoom in. Okay, now I'm zoomed in. It says takeoff configuration or TO configuration. Okay, so now off to the end of the runway. Okay, so here we are at the end of runway 7R. Let's go ahead and dial up ATC here, or which is to say, dial Anchorage Tower. Poke that in from the. Oh.
Anchorage Tower ACBP 444 ready for IFR departure runway 7 right.
ACBP 444 altimeter 29.82150 at 7. Cleared for takeoff runway 7 right.
Cleared for takeoff runway 7 right ACBP 444.
Okay, so press the toga button here. Now you notice I brought the heads up display down. A lot of people probably don't like that, but I don't have a huge monitor and my eyes are not fantastic, so I kind of need this. Go ahead and setting up the AP right now. Got the nav mode going. Okay. I think let's roll out onto the runway. And I already set the landing lights, so those are good to go. Got the toga button pushed, so we're going to go ahead and pull out here, line up, try to get it stable, and then we're going to take off. And this is a lot of concentration, so I'm not going to say a whole heck of a lot while we do this. This is a challenge, and I almost always screw it up. So I'm going to go ahead and start focusing on that now. All right, here we go. We're starting to roll. Okay, I think that's rotate. Oh, those are off the ground. Here we go.
ACBP 444 contact Anchorage departure on 126.4. Good day.
Insert overdub Dave here. Looking back at this, you're going to see me kind of goof around with this here a little bit. I'm struggling to figure out why my autopilot doesn't seem to be engaging nav mode.
ACBP 444 acknowledge last transmission.
Going to 126.4 ACBP 444. Anchorage departure ACBP 444 is at 3,900 feet, climbing 7,000 feet.
ACBP 444 Anchorage. Departure altimeter 29.83. Continue as planned.
So I don't know if you can tell here, but my MFD is telling me I'm way off course. I'm going to try disengaging and re-engaging nav mode, see if that helps. And that appears to have worked. Cool. Hopefully we are now back on track.
Anchorage Center ACBP 444 is at 10,000 feet, climbing 16,000 feet.
And that chime meant ice. Let's go ahead and get that sorted out real quick.
Continue as planned.
And our anti-icing equipment looks like it is on. Oh, let's have a look here. If we look down here at our MFD, it looks like we are heading towards our flight path now, so that's a good thing. Let's see if we can break out of these clouds anytime. Now we are headed towards 16,000. And here we are breaking out of the clouds. Isn't this lovely? I sure do like how the clouds look in the flight simulator here, even if we do get some icing effects from that. That's kind of a pain in the butt. Alright, cool. Let's go ahead and cruise along, and I'll come back with you here in a minute. Alright, so the Kodiak Archipelago is now coming into sight. Just off to our left there, that's Marmot Island, and then off to the right you can kind of see that's a Tunky Cape Peninsula of a Fognak Island. And of course both of those are part of the Kodiak Archipelago, which consists of about 25 islands covering nearly 3,600 square miles. It's the second largest island in the US right after the Big Island of Hawaii. And it's not smaller by a lot. So there is so much I could say about Kodiak Island, and I feel like it's the kind of thing that I need to break into a couple of videos. But a couple of small things I suppose to say as we fly towards Kodiak City, the large community on Kodiak Island. Kodiak City has the largest U.S. Coast Guard base, which is pretty cool. And this is the land of the Alutiiq Sukpak people. And I may have said that wrong, but those are the traditional folks that have lived here for, as they would tell you, time immemorial. Kodiak has a strong Russian influence, as you know, the rest of, I guess, along with the rest of southern coastal Alaska, and a lot of that sort of goes back to Russian fur trading days. These days, you still see a lot of that Russian influence in the way of Russian Orthodox churches, and then also there's a few old believer settlements, I suppose. And I understood most of those to be generally more recent, since the 60s, but I'm not sure in the case of Kodiak. I sort of wonder. I'm probably wrong about that, but anyhow, that's what I know about that. Well, in the meantime, we still have quite a ways to go before we hit the city of Kodiak and the Kodiak Airport. The airplane is generally already kind of ready for descent. There's still a couple of items left to do, but some of the initial stuff we've set up already. So maybe I'll jump ahead a little bit and we can talk when I get a little bit closer to Kodiak City. So just off our nose here, we have the city of Kodiak, or Sunak in Alutiiq, Alutiiq being the Alaska Native peoples of the area. The city itself is about 5,800 people or so. It's pretty substantial in terms of Alaska populations. Back in the day, Kodiak Island was the Russian capital of Alaska. It'd be back in fur trading days before Alaska was bought by Seward, just before the Civil War there. These days, Kodiak is much more known for its commercial fishing, so thinking salmon, halibut, also tremendous sport hunting opportunities. We're talking Kodiak brown bear, elk, Sitka black-tailed deer, and mountain goats being sort of important game species on the island. Other interesting things to note, two key sort of natural disasters that have hit this island, or in particular Kodiak City. It was subject to some pretty significant ashfall from the 1912 eruption of Nova Ruptu, which is a volcano over in Katmai National Park, just over on the Alaska Peninsula, across from here to the west. We'll scope that out at some point. It's somewhat underwhelming in the flight simulator. I've done it a couple of times, always hoping it's going to look better, and it never does. And then, of course, Kodiak was subject to a tsunami from the 1964 Good Friday earthquake that happened in Prince William Sound. So those are some highlights of Kodiak City. It's a neat place. I've been there exactly the one time, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a super neat place to visit. I highly recommend that if you're going to come up to Alaska to visit, if you're not from here, check Kodiak out. It's just pretty cool. There's quite a bit of road to drive on, and there's places to stay, and there's things to do. So yeah. So with that in mind, those are some highlights. Let's go ahead and focus on the airplane for a minute. See if I can actually land this CRJ at that Kodiak Airport there.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to land. Please remain seated until we have stopped.
So this took more than a minute. Here we are lined up at runway 26, heading in to Kodiak Airport. There's actually 3 runways at that Kodiak Airport, all 3 of which seem to point at least one direction straight into a mountain. This one is a lot of fun because you will absolutely come in as a passenger looking out your window and seeing water right until about the very second that you hit the ground, which was my experience. And in this airport, you're going to fly in a 737 or something like a Dash 8. That's the typical equipment. You know, the CRJ is just not a common aircraft that you see in Alaska. I mean, I was pretty happy to see the Alaska liveries, but of course, for this aircraft, that's a Pacific Northwest sort of thing going on there, and I think that CRJ is going to be a common sort of regional jet that Horizon in particular and Alaska Airlines are going to fly out of places like Seattle and Eugene and Portland and those kinds of places. I will say, in the interest of being totally transparent here, I'm recording this as an overdub as opposed to live, because this actually wound up being a pretty darn hard landing to accomplish, and I didn't say or do anything through flight. So I do have it dialed into the ILS runway 26 frequency. The idea being that I was going to take the ILS in here and try to land with it, so that I don't try to have to land this thing on my own. I do struggle with this particular airplane coming down. It's not being a pilot, obviously that's a huge part of it. I have no idea what I'm actually doing, and I'm trying to learn all this stuff by the seat of my pants, as it were. And so managing the throttle is a bit challenging. So here I am flipping down the HUD so that I can kind of see what my speed is doing. And the main reason I'm flipping this HUD down here
Cleared to land runway 26.
Cleared to land runway 26 ACBP 444.
is because I can see where we're headed with the speed. So the speed, which is to say the airspeed. There's like a little ticker on the left-hand side that'll show you if you're trending down significantly or trending up significantly.
1,000.
I will say one of the tough things with this particular runway, and I've tried it a few times, is that the water prevents you from really getting a good sense of height. That's already tough in the sim, but here it's really tough. I've crashed more times than I care to admit trying to land at this airport in the sim. Okay, it's pretty clear we are not aimed down the runway. Turn off the autopilot, hang to the left. I think we're going to be able to do this.
500.
This is where we concentrate. What I want to point out about this is that on one side you have water, that's what we're about to land just outside of, and on the other side you have a bloody mountain. And I wish this were like a unique airport in Alaska, but this is super common where you've got one end somewhere inconvenient and the other end even less convenient for a jet airplane takeoff or landing. But again, you can land a 737 in here and it works just fine. CRJ, no exception. Here we are, like maybe a little bit high, but I think it's okay. This thing will stop on a dime. We are not moving fast.
100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
And we're on the ground. Fantastic.
ACBP 444, turn next taxiway.
So, that was my flight from Ted Stevens Anchorage International Airport in Anchorage, Alaska, down to Kodiak Airport on Kodiak Island in Alaska's south central region and in the Kodiak Archipelago. I hope you enjoyed this flight. It's a little bit different. I totally get that. But I really enjoyed making it, and I do appreciate you hanging out with me. So I will see you in the next video. Thanks.